Hey guys, how you doing? I'm doing good. Thank you for asking, if you asked. I'm here with my cat El Capone. My name is Mark Gavigliio, and this is the Plains People podcast for July 8th. Talk to the owner and runner, or whatever, manager of Paradox Comics and Cars named Rich Early. He's a fantastic guy, so we have pretty good conversation in store for you. Talking about what it's been like to run a small business, what it's been like to run something as niche as a comic books and card store for the last 25 years. Also a little bit about he's blind and what it's been like to run a business being blind, or mostly blind. You can see a little. And yeah, it's a pretty good conversation. I can't wait to share it. So I hope you guys had a good 4th of July. I sure did. Had a bunch of hot dogs and beers. Went to a rodeo. Did you guys go to a rodeo? Well, I don't know, maybe. How many rodeos are on the 4th of July? All right, here we go, and this is a conversation with Rich Early.
Boop, beep, 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 boop, boop.
Awesome, Mark. You know, you were just talking about how podcasts start with a bunch of fluff.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the most tiresome thing ever. Like,
Yeah.
my fiance listens to multiple podcasts where that's the first 10 minutes of the podcast.
Yeah.
Is they talk about, they just want to hear themselves talk about how awesome they are
Or
before they get into the
Random
topic.
crap, yeah. And
Yeah.
and that's what, like, Bill Burr, who I love, and I listen to his podcast, his Monday morning podcast, his first 10 minutes of his podcast is him chatting about the most random sport I've never heard of. And if you scroll down into the comments, people are like, hey, he stops talking about sports at like 15 minutes in. Like, I know I'm not the only person because it's literally written down when it's over.
Well, and I listen to a lot of comic book podcasts, but my
What?
favorite one is Word Balloon, and I don't know if he does a YouTube version or not, or just audio, but
I'm not familiar with it.
the first 5 minutes, what he does is he promotes this place called Half Price Books or Half Price Trades, and
Yeah.
it's literally 50% off the merchandise I'm selling in my store.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, well, I want people to be excited about comics, but I don't want to tell them to listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
So,
That's funny. Okay, well, that's as good as... so, where'd you grow up? Did you grow up in Fargo?
is there going to be some intro that says who I am to the public? Or
No, that's going to be something I'll film beforehand.
Okay.
Sorry to break the fourth wall to the 5 people listening. So did you grow up around Fargo? Have you always been a Fargoan?
Yeah, I was born in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and
Okay.
the thing that I've been really open about more and more lately is the fact that, I was born with congenital glaucoma, which I mean, I lost the vision in my left eye either at birth or within the first month that I was
Wow.
alive. So I was born on like December 4th, 1969, and by January, I was already a patient at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester.
Wow.
you
So
know,
you always had the blindness. It wasn't... So it's like
Yeah.
that Al Pacino movie. It wasn't like... Yeah, it's the reverse.
Yeah, so then, well, right, but I became a patient because we lost the optic nerve in my left eye got crushed.
Oh, jeez.
There's no sight at all. It's just gone, right? And
So right eye is gone.
No, left eye.
Left eye.
Yeah, so then I had 15 plus surgeries by the time I was 14 years old to save the vision in the right eye. And yeah, so it was a heck of a childhood.
So with mixed, so you got a little bit on your right, but it's not super good. It's...
No, I mean, well, it is what it is.
Yeah,
So-
but I mean, it's you can't. You're not able to drive. Or you don't read the giant, you probably read the giant E, but you don't read anything past it with the right.
Sometimes I can't even see the giant E. So
I'll
but-
let you know
well,
right now. It's an E.
But
You're good.
yeah, exactly. Like that, I make that joke all the time. I'm like, guys, I could just lie to you. Like, I know it's the E. Okay.
Yeah,
so,
that's the most iconic first one.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, but the thing is, I'm 48. I've owned Paradox Comics for 25 years, and
We'll get to that.
But for a lot of my life, like, the point is that for a lot of my life, like, I didn't want to deal with, I didn't want to talk openly about
Yeah.
being blind or about all the different issues that are out there, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm at this point now where that's all I want to do. Like, because I don't want people to grow up and go through the mental case stuff that I went through,
Yeah.
So if I can help people
Somebody
and prevent
stepping on the cat?
that's
You're throwing
not
up?
me.
Okay.
No.
No, I know it wasn't you. We got 9 other people in the room who are just beating cats with baseball bats. So sorry,
Nice.
guys. It's what we double as.
But yeah, so back to the beginning. I mean, yeah, I grew up, we moved to Fargo in 1975.
So that was before. I know 2 of your I don't know how many brothers you have, but I know 2 of them. Is that the only you got?
Yep, 2 siblings, 2 younger brothers.
Alex and Nick.
Yep.
Yeah. And Nick, I shared an art studio with for a long time.
Yeah.
And I get along with Nick really well. I mean, he's a weird guy, but so am I. So never had anything against him. I've always really liked Nick. And then, so your youngest sibling is Alex, who is he still at Docs? He's still working at Paradox?
Yep.
And he's been doing that since right out of high school?
No, well, now 2003, so when he was 14 or 15. So
in high school already?
Yep.
Wow. That's...
Now, he's not a dropout or anything.
No, I know he's not. I think he graduated a year before me, as far as I remember.
How old are you?
29, but I got held back a year.
Sure.
So he's what, 29 or 30? Something like that?
Yep.
Sorry, did I just show how huge the age gap is between you guys?
He was born December 5th, 1988.
Okay, wow.
So he'll be 30 this year then,
okay.
I guess.
Something
I can't
like
do
that.
math.
Yeah,
I sell comic books. I don't do math. We got a guy for that.
So there was literally, I'm not going to do the math, but that many, I don't do math either. I don't even sell comic books, but I read them. So there's that much time between you and your youngest.
Yeah, 15 years. Nick was born when I was 14, and I remember it was it was like the middle of July. I was at my grandma's place in Sioux Falls, and he was born up here in St. Ansgar, and I was just watching Saturday morning cartoons. It was beautiful. So.
And same folks, all 3 of you guys?
Yeah. Yes. Yep,
yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I can't tell. You don't look like anything like that. Maybe eventually that you will.
Well, yeah. Our family was weird. Like, we have a really small family. I was the only child of any on either side until that year. And Nick and then my first cousin were both born in the same year within 5 months of each other. So
for the longest time, you were the only people to get presents at Christmas. And
awesome. I sort of have it both ways. Like, I have 14 years of the only child syndrome, but then I also have okay, now you have a brother and you have to, you're old enough where you're basically going to babysit him. Yeah. So, it's a weird flip.
You got the protector thing too at all, or?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Especially with Alex. I don't know why it's with Alex more than with Nick. It's not,
Yeah.
But yeah.
So let's rewind. So you came up to Fargo. Mm-hmm. My biggest and the most main question, which I don't know how to ask it without seeming rude, but I think you know me enough to know that I'm
gonna be
I don't
rude.
have the ability, to not be rude.
Yeah.
But all right, so blind in one eye, almost blind completely in the other. So how were playing and selling magic cards and reading comics your thing? Those are very read heavy things. Like, I'm a poor reader, which gets me out of reading. And you're blind.
Until I was 21, I had 20/40 vision in my right eye.
Okay.
And so the major thing I was missing was depth perception.
Yeah.
So I couldn't go to 3D movies, I couldn't drive, I couldn't do things like that. But I biked and got around, and there was, I read normal print. I mean, all that sort of stuff. So, comics come from the Mayo Clinic. When I was a little kid, I would say I was about 5 years old. I don't have any idea, right? But there was a newsstand in the basement, and my dad would always stop there when we were on our way up to. It's like you'd park in the parking lot, you'd go down to the basement to the newsstand, you'd head up to E7 to wait, and he would pick up the newspaper, a crossword puzzle book, a novel, whatever, and somewhere in there, he started picking comic books off that stand,
Nice. Do you remember what your first love was?
Can
I guess it?
Sure.
I'm gonna guess it's Spider-Man because anyone who's been reading that long is Spider-Man.
1975. Yeah, it's a different world, and so it was. There was an amazing Spider-Man cover. It's like issue 124 or 5.
Yeah.
Some bad guy has Nova and Spider-Man chained to missiles, and he says, his plan is to fire the missiles, blow up New York, and kill them.
Super classic, campy, Silver Age stuff.
Oh, it's a great cover, right?
Oh, yeah, that's a great cover.
One of the cool things is, one of the very earliest comics I ever had was Spider-Man 129, which is the first Punisher.
Yeah, I own it.
It's
in one of my boxes of comics I got in the corner over there.
And it was a comic, I destroyed that comic from the time I was 5.
You didn't realize what it was?
Yep. But I sold it to somebody when I was 22 for $200, or even the destroyed copy that I had.
Wow.
So,
I think I bought my... the cover looks great, at least the front cover, and that's all I care about. I care cosmetic more than anything, and I don't try to resell them, so I don't care too much when I bought them. But I think I bought mine for $300, and it doesn't look that bad, and I bought that, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago.
Do you have the, there's a really cool Frank Miller Captain America cover with the Punisher on it?
No.
Yeah, you should come by. Oh, it's gorgeous.
I would like
it's
it.
an iconic cover. So
my wife doesn't let me put comics on the walls anymore. I used to have all my, like, big... not even spendy, but just in my eyes, awesome books. Because I had first appearance of Master Pandemonium. It's $1 comic, but whatever, it's awesome. Because it's his horrible D-list villain, and it's and it's trying to introduce him like he's the next Red Skull. It's like, and Master Pandemonium doing blah blah blah, and it's like no one cares who he is anymore. But anyways, I used to have them all up on the wall, and she won't let me. We now buy art, which is very lame, I guess. I don't know. we now have a blue girl's butt on our wall. That's what apparently better than comics. But anyways, so
but yeah, so the thing is, my eyesight and my fandom are just completely tied together. I don't know if I'd ever picked up a comic otherwise in the oddest way.
Well, especially since you being in the Mayo Clinic strictly because of your eyes, and that's how you got into them, so that's crazy.
And people are right. I mean, it was way different than it is today. My grandma's house was next to a drugstore, and there was a rack of comics.
Yeah, there was comic book stands all over. It wasn't just the 2 or 3 nerd shops in the area.
Yeah, they didn't even exist. I mean, when it was the direct market really was born in, they say 1979 is really when it was established. When that year, the direct market accounted for about 5% of comic sales. Wow! And in 1987, it accounted for 70% of comic sales.
I remember still when I was really little. I remember feeling it weird because I was going to Paradox by then, your store, when I was really little. But I remember walking into random gas stations that would have comics, and that even then I was like, what? Why are these in the gas? Like, who's going to the Casey's to buy a new X-Men whatever? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. But yeah, and then it used to be the norm, which is even weirder. Yeah.
Well, those were distributed by the magazine distribution companies. So Saks News around here. Everybody's got them, right? Mm-hmm. And so I don't know if those ended exactly because of all the problems in magazine distribution, or I don't wholly know why those racks ended up going away. I would guess because of the downtrend in circulation on magazines, just dragging down those companies, but I don't actually know.
And, well, also, I think the fandom has just changed so much of people would be able to buy them on newsstands, and it was casual fans and different style of writing, too. Those old Silver Age, in 15 pages, you got Green Goblin came out of nowhere, took Gwen Stacy, put her over here, and then you figured out a way to break her out, and then it ends normal, and you didn't really have to follow it. Now you've got these 10 to 20 comic arcs that you have to really be a hardcore fan, and then you need a place like your place or other places that set comics aside and actually read every one. And not only that, but if you don't read you can't just read one strain of Avengers. You have to be reading New Avengers and whoever's Avengers and Uncanny Avengers to get the whole arc of what's going on at the time. And I think that's not even close to the way it was in the 70s. Like, I think if you read a comic back then, it was like, wait 10 issues later till you find out what happens. People would be like, what? I'm not going to do that. Just, I don't know. Maybe, is that my perception, or is that about...
No, I think that's pretty accurate. Also, a lot of comics were published with multiple stories in the same comic because of circulate. Like Marvel was maybe going to publish 20 books in a month, so if they wanted an Iron Man story and a Doctor Strange story, they had to cram them together in a book called Strange Tales.
Yeah, I was just going to say they call it Strange Tales or Astonishing Tales or whatever. Or
there's actually a point in 1957 where Frederick Wortham and his campaign, Seduction of the Innocent. Marvel had become Timely Comics, and they were effectively out of business. They were down to publishing 8 books
because of the comic book code was getting destroyed.
Yeah, and in fact, they had to get published for about a year by the parent company at the time of DC Comics. So there was actually a time when Marvel Comics was published by the same people.
Did they do any crossovers then? Or no?
Well, it was 1961 is Fantastic Four. So
so it was right before his retirement comic, which created everything we're looking at now in the terms of Marvel was literally what he thought was going to be his last book, because he's like, let's go all out and make what I want to make, and turns out it set the tone for 50 years of books after that.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. So I actually recently I learned a lot because I did a talk at a retirement home for my fiance's sister, where she's the event coordinator, and she wanted us to talk about comics. Well, if you go to a retirement home to talk about comics, what you're going to be talking about Western comics, war comics, and EC and things like that from the 40s and 50s. So I read all kinds of articles, and they're just fascinating. Dell Publisher was the biggest comics publisher in the world.
Jeez.
In 1953, they said they sold 26 million comics a month.
Wow, and that would be good now. That would be insane now.
I don't know that we sell 26 million comics a year as
that's
an entire industry.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but and data isn't really available because they actually didn't even have to publish their print runs. The post office required them to start doing it in 1960. So the data from before that is sketchy a lot of the time. So
I found a box of old books, or somebody gave me a box of old books for $1 that was some really, really old comics from way back in the day, and then also science fiction magazines that were kind of comic booky but they weren't, and then I didn't realize how big horror comics were, because half of it was 60s at least, or 60s or 70s were just the old school Tales of the Crypt comics and all these, and I was just watching or reading them, and the art was fantastic. The stories weren't really existent. They were guy walks over here, scary thing happens, they walk away. A lot of them at least seemed that way. But I remember the art being they were doing so much with so little, just their couple colors, but it still looked fantastic.
Yeah, sometimes it's amazing. If you've ever looked at Captain America Comics #1, it came out in 1941. The cover is Captain America punching Hitler.
Yep.
And it's 6 months before we even entered World War II.
Which is insane. When I first heard that, it blew my mind.
Yeah. But that was Jack Kirby art, and it's very modern.
It is gorgeous. Yeah.
So much Golden Age art is terrible, but Kirby was just, a god among men.
And you have a lot of those guys who, Kirby or the first John Romito Sr., but people who, just, I don't know, or Gibson, who did Watchmen. I love those because they're just so simple, and he doesn't really push this huge style or anything. They just look so, great, but... Anyways, if we talk about art, comic book art, we'll never get off that subject.
Yeah, that's true.
But I think I had another question with comics, but now...
Well, we're up to I'm 5 years old, so that's
so
going well.
Let's jump a lot. So, what came first, Paradox or Alex?
No, Alex.
Alex, okay.
I mean, I graduated from Fargo North.
We're at Nick is when he came in at 15.
Yeah, I graduated from Fargo North in 1988, and I mean, I'm kind of the...
Not 88.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of the quintessential nerd generation. I saw Star Wars in the theater when it was just called Star Wars in 1977.
Before it was Episode 4 and New
Right,
Hope.
yeah, so... and things like that, and I grew up, all the stuff that became this huge thing, I was that generation of kids.
Yeah, and it wasn't niche back then. You guys weren't you were the stereotypical nerds who people made fun of, but now the preppy kids know all the Marvel movies because it's huge right now.
Yeah, well, in the late 70s, Marvel again was in bankruptcy trouble, and Star Wars is famously thought to have saved them. You know what? Do you know what Marvel licensed Star Wars comics from Lucasfilm in 1976 for?
No.
$0.
Jeez, so Lucas goes here, guys.
Yep. So
that's crazy.
I got they were doing Conan comics. And the writer of that said, "Oh, we should do more licensed stuff," So they
no crap.
Lucasfilm didn't know what they had at all, in the licensing department, and just so Marvel sold in all printings sold over 1 million copies of Star Wars #1. It was the first comic in over 15 years to sell over 1 million copies.
Jesus. So for people who the 3 people listening who are not 100%
cast of thousands, sir. Cast of thousands.
The cat's the only one listening right now, but Dark Horse took over for Star Wars, at least when I was a kid, it was Dark
Yep.
Horse Comics doing
Yep.
it.
Well,
was
Marvel-
that way later on when Marvel
Yes.
got rid of Star Wars?
Yes, well, after Return of the Jedi left the theaters, Lucas said they were done. So Marvel published comics for another year or two, but of course, with no movies and no toys, no one was reading the comics.
And no
anymore.
one cared for the ECU or the Extended Universe until somebody finally came up with it and they realized that all these nerds have had all these years without Star Wars, so they ate up anything.
That really started with Thrawn, and
Yep.
there were Star
in
Wars
the
novels.
90s, early 90s?
Early 90s, yep.
Yeah.
There were Star Wars novels in the 70s. There was a Han Solo trilogy. There was Splinter of the Mind's Eye. There were several other books.
When was the very famous The Tales from the Cantina or whatever? It's just the one that I ran into in a bookstore and I like looked at it and it was like I read the short story with Greedo and it was literally just like two random guys doing something that wasn't exciting at all and Greedo just walked by and it was like, who's gonna eat the were fans needing Star Wars that bad that it's like, hey, they said Greedo, he was in a scene. And that was it.
So yeah, but those comics wind down in the mid '80s, and you're absolutely right. It's like 1991 or 2. Dark Horse picks up the license, and at the time, Star Wars is a dead property, so they're taking a chance. But those, they hired Dave Dorman to paint those covers for Dark Empire, and they're just gorgeous. You know?
And I remember when those were coming out because I picked up a couple issues when I was really little, and I bought my first couple comics, and I'll bring that up in a minute. But I looked at those, and I didn't recognize any character, and I was like, what is going on? Like weird Exar Kun and Ulick Keldroma, old school, really, Old Republic stuff before the video games were a thing. And it just... No one knew who they were, including me. I didn't know what year they took place or anything because the internet wasn't a thing
so you're
yet.
talking about like the Knights of the Old Republic era comics. Well, the first thing they did was called Star Wars Dark Empire, and it was set after Return of the Jedi, and it's got Luke, Han, Lando, Leia, everybody in it. And at the time, until with Thrawn coming out around the same time, nobody had done any stories after Jedi, right?
Yeah.
So Luke actually takes down an AT-AT in the first issue, and it's the most badass thing ever at that point, right? Like he faces one down and collapses it with the Force. It's so cool, but and that kind of kicks things off, and that was a big book for me.
Okay.
I get out of high school at '88. I went to Morehead State for upwards of 5 years before I dropped out and opened a comic shop. But
nice.
in the meantime, I had all these comics that I'd bought. I mean, when I was in high school and junior high, as soon as there was hot lunch and my parents would just give me money rather than buy the thing, all I did was, instead of buying hot lunch, I went and got a peanut butter sandwich and milk, and I saved the rest for comics, and comics were Fridays back then.
Yeah, and, not Tuesdays.
Yep, and my allowance was $5, but I would also have an extra $3 or $4 by the end of that, because I'm working with $1.25 a day, right? And I'm turning it into 75 cents for my sandwich and my milk, right?
Yeah.
But that's $2.50. It was huge back in
and
that.
You weren't following
Comics,
9 comics each week. You're probably following 1 to 2, or were you?
And comics were 60 cents.
Oh yeah, no crap. I was trying. I just thought they're $1.50, right?
No.
In my day, they're 3 to 5 now.
I mean, I had a lot of when I really started reading, they were 25 cents. They went up to 35 cents. I had all these comics that said still only 35 cents on the cover because other people had gone up to 40 cents, and then it was 50, 60, 75. And now it's $4. But
jeez.
I one time I got after ninth grade, I had failed a class in ninth grade, and I hid my report card from my parents. And I was supposed to get a $5 a week allowance, and it was summer, so there was no lunch money to finagle, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the 2 weeks, I got my $10. I served my time. I got both my week's allowances. I went to Lantern Comics, and I came home with 20 comics.
I remember Lantern.
Yeah.
They were selling comics way back in the day because I remember it said newspaper and comic books. Yeah. But when I first went in there, I must have been 3rd grade, probably around the same time I walked into your store, and I bought an awesome Dragon Ball Z action figure from there, and I had it forever. It was still Japanese cover before that marketing or those toys and stuff made it over here. It was a Japanese action figure they had, and it was super awesome. Super Saiyan Vegito, by the way. But I wasn't into comic books or anything, and I just remember going in there and bull crapping with the weird hippie behind the counter as he was watching Quentin Tarantino movies every day, and I was like a 6-year-old because this was before parenting was really an issue. No one really cared. So I would just walk downtown and dodge the people asking me for money and the one guy, and then walk in there and just bullcrap with this stranger at Lantern for a while. But anyway, so let me share that memory with
that's
you.
a good story.
Yeah,
So.
thank you.
Lantern. So Comic Junction was actually the first place in town, and Terry and Kip operated out of their garage. Their first account with a publisher or with a distributor was out of their garage, and they actually then moved into the basement of West Acres in like 1979,
where like
1980.
Big Nick's is now.
In that area, yeah. But Big Nick's was opened by 84 or 85.
I know. I'm trying to talk to Galen, but I can't get him in here.
I can connect you.
No, I literally we have him
I just talked to Galen today.
I talked to him yesterday.
Yeah, okay.
I'm right by the mall. I walk over and bullcrap with him whenever he lets me. But
he'd
but
be
he's
a great podcast. He's an awesome
that's
guy.
what I thought too. But he's just so afraid of we just sit and talk about nothing. It's
he is. It's funny when you talk to him. I love Galen, but he is so not technology or social media savvy or anything. It's like 10 years ago.
He's one of the one people I'm comfortable with talking politics with because he can hold a conversation, but he's not super far either side, which I always retract whenever somebody's like either side super hardcore. I'm like, you're scaring me. But he's pretty close to my views, and he's not build a wall or kill all these people. So I usually talk politics with him, believe it or not. But
it's a super sidetrack. But have you met Josh Much, the guy who's selling the place?
Yeah, I like Josh.
Yeah, Josh is a good guy. So.
Yeah, he's a really good guy. And I didn't realize he was such a nerd. I thought he was buying it. He's a huge nerd.
Huge nerd. He played Magic at my store 10 years ago. So we have a very good relationship. And that was something that's really changed, but we can talk about that if we have time.
I'm getting my wheel back and stop chatting about nothing. Signs from my producers. So okay. So where were we? So producers. What year did he? Yeah. I'm a bad interviewer and he's a good producer, so we do.
But so that's Comic Junction in 1980. Lantern opened in like 1981. There's actually a guy called who called himself Fargo Comics for a while also, and I found Lantern in 1981 or 1982 and pretty much shopped there ever since. I mean, I was buying in 1985. I bought Crisis on Infinite Earths and Secret Wars. I bought Watchmen off the shelf. I bought Dark Knight Returns off the shelf. Actually, Watchmen #1 I did not buy. I was like 16. Every single I buy this book, you guys. I was a superhero guy. All I wanted was superheroes. So I looked at the cover and I was like, I don't care. Like, there's nothing for me.
It didn't have a precedent for what the hell Watchmen was at the time. People were like, oh no, this is like a dark take, satirical take on. No one's gonna know what you're talking about back then. It was just people were like, what are you doing? I wasn't
ready for it. I mean, I know the world was, but I was still in my watching Transformers, rooting for the X-Men mood, So I didn't know that I wanted Watchmen.
Well, I didn't actually get it for so long. I read it in high school and it was over my head, and I read it in college and like, holy crap, okay. But even in high school, it was like, this is just slow and boring. I don't get what it is. And then when it was coming out, and everyone's like, dude, this movie is going to be insane. And I actually like the movie. And we don't need to talk for an hour about the Watchmen movie. Because we have before.
The next stop, is so that's sort of my life, right, through high school and whatever. So I started going to college. I'm off trying to have apartments, blah, 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 like everybody else in the world, right? And what I started doing was you could go to conventions in town. Tables were $30-$40. So anybody could afford a table. And so I would start doing that. I did that. The first one I ever did was
selling your books that you've been buying for all these years.
Well, my parents basically have been buying for me for all these years. Yeah. So, it's like 1990 or so.
Okay.
And I think it was the ValleyCon in 1990 that was at...
There was a ValleyCon back then?
ValleyCon's been around since the 70s.
Holy crap!
Oldest, it's almost... I mean,
and I'm a jerk. I don't even go to
years,
ValleyCon.
So.
I'm a jerk.
But I didn't care about the con. I bought a table and I paid $40 for this table. I made like $200 at the show.
Wow, selling books that you didn't need anymore because you already read them.
And I went and spent it on beer and more comics.
Well, college, right? So beer and more comics.
Yeah, it was amazing. So
that used to be 100% of what I bought was beer and comics from you.
Well, my dad. I mean, the reason we moved here in 1975 was, my dad had just gotten his master's and bounced around a little bit. He was trying to get into teaching at the college level, but got stuck. Like as we all do, like you gotta have a job. So he was a claims adjuster. So we bounced around a little bit, and so we ended up here. And by '83, he was working at NDSU, and then he worked at Morehead State for 30 years until He just retired a couple of years ago. So,
Okay.
But so in the 90s, I'm going to college, or 88, I go to college at Morehead State. I get all my tuition for free because he's vested enough where that's one of the benefits. So,
Wow.
which, in a lot of ways was cool, and in another way, a lot of ways was a terrible thing for me, because
you took it for granted.
Yeah,
because it didn't
exactly.
matter. You're
Yep.
going to, the same thing. Everyone who's 19 thinks they have to go to school.
Yep.
And I even fell on that, and, the one thing I do each week is ignore my student loans. It's something I wake up. Mondays, I'm like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm not going to answer that phone call. Moving on. So anyways, and then I'm going to get the text from my wife, like, call the student loans people.
College is great. College gives you opportunities you don't have otherwise.
Yeah.
A guy put it to me a long time ago, a guy I knew through the Small Business Administration. He said, you're going to pay for your education one way or another. You're either going to pay for it with money through college, or you're going to pay through it with time.
Yeah.
Whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
So that's absolutely true.
I a lot of the things I know now, I learned a lot of great stuff in college, and a lot of it isn't so much things I can apply because I went to art school, so not a lot of it is what I can apply, but there are things that constantly go through my head of what I learned about philosophy, what I learned about just myself and this and that, and mythology and all the liberal arts classes that I don't need them at my job, but I constantly look at philosophy and psychology and sociology in my head with dealing with anything in life. And I think those are a really good thing of trying to understand how human beings think and why they're saying something to you and why you're saying something and why you're getting mad about something that's trivial. All that can be explained through those things. So does it help you work at McDonald's? No. But is it useful? I think it totally is. Is it worth $100,000? I don't know. But that's what I'm paying for it. So... But okay, so
so
we're right at
me,
the end of college, I think, is when you're opening.
Well, right. So but for me, like up through high school, there was a support system. The state of North Dakota had all these services for disabled kids, so on and so forth, and there's all kinds of stories. It doesn't matter, but you go off to college, and it's like you got to go find it. It's not provided for you like it is up until that point, right? So the big thing is like when you get to be free, you don't want to do that.
No.
You don't want anything to do with it. And so I ran from all that stuff,
Okay.
And I went to college because I didn't know what I was doing. I had no goal. I tried 3 or 4 different things, and nothing ever stuck. And by the end, I was just not even attending classes,
Oh, wow.
And so the show thing comes along, and I meet a guy named Tim Top, and Tim and I met through Lantern, and we started. He's into non-sports cards. If you remember, like. You were very young, but like we were all insane from about 1989 to 1994. We loved non-sports cards.
So
just
these were the weird collector cards.
The collector cards of pictures of movies and TV shows. And
I had
whatever,
a couple when I was a kid. My brother had Jurassic Park ones when I was a kid, which I just remember having one card. All the other ones probably got destroyed because we were munchkins, but it was like just a shot from the movie of them looking at a dinosaur coming out of an egg or whatever.
And the companies didn't know what they were doing. The first ever Marvel Universe cards, they had these insert foil cards.
Yeah.
But they were thicker than the rest of the cards, and they slid. We would go to Stop and Go all over town and
figure out
feel
which
the packs
ones.
and buy all the ones with the foils, and we were terrible people. But but that was things that you did.
Yeah. No, I feel you.
So, but we sort of teamed up as we became friends because it'd be cooler to have 2 tables than 1 table. You look like the big shot,
And especially if he has different things and you have those cards, you have the comics, that's double the amount of people who are going to come over. Yeah.
So we became friends during the time. We were good friends with several people at Lantern. We would always go to Tim's house. We'd have barbecues, and it just slowly became more and more. Then we started going to shows around the area, and one thing led to another. One night. And we'd started talking about that. Well, what if we opened a shop? Blah, 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 blah. And, you're 22, and you think you know everything, and you think the guys who have the stores are wrong and know nothing. And
we're going to sell coffee. We're going to stay open until 3 a.m. That's what I used to think. When I used to go to your store when I was 16, I was like, why don't they serve beer?
Yep.
And why aren't they 24 hours? I would totally come here at 3 a.m. for a beer and play comics because I didn't understand anything, or play Magic because I played Magic back then.
Well, and a lot of people do that. But you think you're just convinced, look, what was it like to be a young male in your 20s? You're right, everyone else is wrong, everybody else can go screw themselves, right? That's just the way it is. that it all fed into that. And Tim was like 35, and he'd had a couple of small businesses before, and so
so he knew the drill, kind of
knew how to get one started in a way that
Yeah.
I didn't know how to do. But he wanted me for, I was one of those kids who knew everything about everything for comics, and that's what we needed,
Yeah.
So it just sort of led to one night we were flipping, we were like, we should do this, and Tim picked up a thesaurus and was flipping through a thesaurus because we were like, what do we call it? Blah, blah, blah. And he finds the word paradox. Well, in 1992, the number one thing that any nerd did was watch Star Trek The Next Generation.
Okay.
So
Which I didn't do because I was 3.
Yeah. But a time paradox and all, that's a term used 1,000 times in Star Trek TV shows, right?
Yeah.
So we all knew it was, that's really cool because it's sci-fi-y and it's a cool name. And we had this idea for this commercial right away. We were going to have 2 kids on their bikes. And they're both going the same direction. One kid says to the other kid, where are you going? The kids can say, I'm going to the comic shop. He says, where are you going? I'm going to the card store. They both say the name Paradox. He's like, we can't be both. It's got to be one or the other.
Yeah.
It was a paradox.
And that's why it's
like, and we never made that commercial. It was a horrible idea, but.
And that's why it says comics and cards still.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's always been the perfect marriage if you're going to marriage 2 things. Because I've been to places that sell cards and then video games. And I didn't. Then people just came for the cards and buying the video games that sell and didn't do enough and it never worked out. But I think comics and cards have always been so married.
Well, our business name to the state of North Dakota is Paradox Comics -N Cards Incorporated.
Okay.
So we could change our DBA.
And what's your social security number? Okay.
Yeah. No. But in 1993, you didn't look for a URL for your business.
Yeah.
You didn't, and I mean, we were just 2 dumb guys. We didn't have any marketing. But if I went back, I would literally call the place Fargo Comics.
Yeah, because
nothing else. Yep,
yeah, because
exactly.
It's not called that. No one's called that yet. Yeah.
Yep, yeah.
And also the more simple and the more meta something, or more straight up like a place called like Frank's Bar is going to do better than like the Snake Hole Lounge because you know what it is. It's Frank's Bar.
Cool names are cool, right? But who cares? You just want the
I want to go to
identifier.
the bar or the tavern or Moe's Tavern.
One of my employees, Dan Green, just has this joke, like, a former employee, Dan Green, he's like, we should just call ourselves Star Wars. Everything we should do should always be,
no one's
people
gonna
search for Star Wars in Fargo, then they'll find, the comic shop. So.
Yeah, no, that's a good one.
Well, my theory was, right, so if you just call yourself Star Wars, like, nobody's really going to question it because they're going to assume, they must have the license to do that, right? So who's actually going to doubt it, was my theory, so it might work for a while. Anyway.
So I'm going to fast forward a little bit. I want to... First, I'm gonna throw out around a year, and you tell me how long you've been open at that point. So,
sure.
You guys opened up. You said what?
93.
93. So then I must have been coming into the store at 90. I would have been about 7 or 8. So it would have been about 96 or 97.
Okay.
I'm not doing any math, but about 97. So at that time, the store was completely different. It was 100% different. It was just half the store.
Crappy.
Yeah. And then you got the place where you sat. The counter was towards the door, and there was 2 little areas, and you had the Marvel, you had the Marvel and the DC separated, and then all your cards were in the back, and you didn't have a place for tournaments, as far as I knew, because I didn't know what the heck Magic the Gathering was when I was that old. But I still remember, and this is the lamest joke ever, and it's your joke, so I'm going to make fun of you for a second. But remember going in there to buy Pokemon cards when I was super, super little, and we were, all these Pokemon nerds were all, super geeking out about this and that, and no one was really watching the show yet, so we're trying to figure out the lore of Pokemon just via the cards, and somebody's like, Giovanni, he runs the Team Rocket, and you're like, no, I heard he got replaced by Luigi. And then you laughed at this joke, but of course I assumed you knew everything, so I was like, Luigi's taking, and then I told all my friends that a whole other guy's gonna start taking over Team Rocket called Luigi, and I had like 3 of them convinced, and it ended up never happening, because you're random, I'm assuming,
horrible
racial
joke
against Italians, which I'm offended by, because I'm Italian, or at least my name is. Yeah, but then, which brings me to my next question is,
But hold on.
I was
Okay,
going to bring
say
up
one
Pokemon,
thing.
but okay.
I'm going to say one thing about Pokemon. I
Okay.
don't remember that joke, but the one thing every little kid
You
did...
remember me when I was 7? Come on.
No,
You
but the
remember
one thing every
7-year-olds?
little kid did is they thought the picture on the pack was what they were going to get inside the pack. So every set would have like 3 different packs, but 120 different cards, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if it had Charizard on the pack, then they were sure the Charizard was inside.
And
that
if it
pack.
wasn't, they
Yeah,
were
so-
angry.
Yep.
Well, and also marketing something to kids, and also the marketing literally says "gotta catch them all."
Yeah.
It's one of the most genius marketing ideas ever. Where you talk about introducing drugs to children at a young age, like Pokemon was baby's first meth. So much because we got addicted to it so much when we were kids. I remember even like the preppy bully jocks were playing Pokemon at recess, and it wasn't even a nerdy thing. And I think I remember that still being a phenomenon of now, now it's like that. But I think that was one of the first real nerd things that popped into pop culture, at least in my eyes.
Yes, no, you're
as far as
nothing
it did.
has ever been like Pokemon, and the world it really can't be again.
No,
and
no.
The reason it
And
can't.
Pokemon hasn't left either. It's still in its zeitgeist.
correct,
It's
yeah.
still right there.
Yep, but and the reason, well, okay, so I mean, in 1999 when Pokemon came along, so my shop, my partnership dissolved in 1996.
Okay.
96, 97 that winter, and I was there was a morning. Here, you know, everybody has these, but I was $18,000 in debt, and I was $3,000 in the red in my checking account, and my
Jeez.
partner had just left.
Oh,
By all rights, I was not a business.
yeah. And,
You know, I was not an entity that was alive.
and
right?
now you're
And
just
so,
looking how far away the drive to the Golden Gate Bridge is, and you realize it's not even worth the gas money to just say screw it all. You know, that's how I'd be thinking. Like, that and debt, no one's buying anything besides Pokemon cards. It was a suicide joke. It was a bad joke. We can edit it out.
no, I understand. And so, well, Pokemon comes around, you know, like 2 years after that. So in the middle, I'm just limping along, and all I wanted to do, honestly, I
get
was
out.
so well, yeah, there was a point when I assumed that was the case, but Magic was there, and Friday Night Magic came along, and all I wanted to do was play Friday Night Magic. I didn't care about.
You
the
didn't even
business.
want to run the business.
No, I
Yeah.
didn't. I just we'd sit around at the counter play testing decks, and we weren't sorting cards, and we weren't, you know,
In those-
it was absolutely a clubhouse in the worst way.
Yeah,
of what a
if you weren't in it, you felt alienated if you came in and you weren't part of the club. I'm assuming
Yep.
which there's still kind of that when it comes to the Magic crowd. If you're not
Yep.
if you're not friends with the top players, you feel super like a high school hierarchy still now. At least I did when I was playing. But that's just
So
people-
Pokemon comes along, and we've got an account. They're published. The cards in America were published by Wizards of the Coast. They licensed them, and so I've got accounts with Wizards of the Coast. Blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just I'm the right guy in the right place at the right time, but I didn't have the money.
Yeah.
You know, if I had, I don't have a lot of money today, but I have a lot of credit. So if I had the credit that I had today
You
in
would've bought out
1999,
way more.
I'd have been rich. Like,
Yeah.
just no doubt about it. There's a distributor of mine. I'm lifelong friends with. Well, not lifelong because I didn't know him until in the 90s, but they bought an island
Jesus.
because of Pokemon.
Because
They
of Pokemon.
literally bought an island
because they
of
jumped
Pokemon.
on that train.
Yep.
Right at the right moment.
Yep.
Well, that was another thing, as we were talking about where you can buy these things, is Magic the Gathering, at least now you can buy it in Walmart or Target or whatever, but
Yep.
Pokemon was at every single store.
Yeah.
Like, period.
Well-
Like, even gas stations, everywhere. And I bet it was hard to just jump right onto that right away when it was global.
So here's here's a cool thing and a thing I regret. So the second set
Perfect.
that came out was Jungle. The third
remember
set was
Jungle.
Fossil.
Yep.
We used to go to Walmart in Fargo and Moorhead and buy them out for the
Wow.
$3.99 a pack or two. I think they were three. Well, they might have been $2.99. Whatever the pack price was, right?
Wow.
Let's say it was $2.99. We would write Walmart a check for like $1,200-$1,500.
Jeez.
Bring them back to the store, mark them up $2 a pack. Yeah,
Jesus.
that was us. Like we did that. We did that over and over and over and over again. So you've never seen anything like. We used to have these moms. One of them, her family owned a bunch of the Domino's in town.
Yeah.
So she would come in, and we knew her really well, really friendly with her. But this other mom would come in that we didn't know as well. And they would literally bidding war over singles for their kids. They would stare at each other. They would compete. If one spent 100, the other one needed to spend 150 on her kid, and it would just go back and forth.
So this is the amount of fandom that you just weren't ready for.
No, and we weren't. We didn't know. We had no experience. I mean, we'd been around for 6 years, but I had survived this partnership breakup, and I had no idea how to. If all the things I know now, I could have capitalized like mad on all this stuff, But it saved me. I mean, if Pokemon hadn't happened, we likely just would have gone out of business. So it's not that it did nothing for me. It took me from nothing to having a chance. It
almost looks like there's eras of that now, where now you can say the Pokemon one did really good, and then Magic the Gathering becoming what it did always gives you guys at least steady flow. Period.
Well, once you have multiple lines, I mean, we were in comics since day one, and non-sports cards were not a line. I mean, that was just like
that was just something funny.
You look back and you just go, "What the hell were we thinking?" But Magic came out the same summer we opened, and we did have a third partner for a very short time, and she wanted us to order like a box of Magic earlier, and we're like, "No, we're not a game store. We're not doing this," because like games at the time were Advanced Dungeons and Dragons.
That was it.
And that was it. And we were like, we're not doing that. We don't want to be that, And so it took a couple of sets before we finally got a box. And we're just, back then, if a box of Magic showed up in town, everyone knew. And they flew to that store and they bought it out.
And imagine, probably not as bad as the Pokemon thing, but imagine now if you bought those boxes that at the time, you were talking about the first two sets where they unlimited and whatever. If you bought a couple boxes of those and literally just put one away, one of those bats is what, $200, $300 you could sell now?
More than that, sir.
Yeah, more than that. Sorry. I know the numbers from when I played 15 years ago.
A pack of alpha sells for about $3,000. A box is like $100,000.
When I was in college, maybe it was a different. It must not have been alpha, but it was one of the first two. Somebody sold one for $300.
Yeah, no, the markets are bananas right now.
They go. Right now it's that high up.
All collector. Well, I mean, the number one card, the signature card of Magic the Gathering is a Black Lotus.
It's Black Lotus, yeah.
Right? So back in the day, 1994, you're like, oh, it's so expensive, it's like $300,
Yeah.
And then it would be 1,000, and then it would be 3,000. I mean,
I think 3,000 when I was playing, it was a $3,000.
Yeah, it beat up Unlimited Lotus today is at least $10,000.
Jeez. For a little tiny piece of cardboard.
Yep.
That's what fandom can do that no one else can do.
You paid $300 for a comic.
Well, yeah, no, but still, that's such a great thing of a piece of paper can get turned into so much by just us wanting it. Look, it doesn't. A piece of cardboard doesn't have any actual value. You can't hit anyone with it. You can't drive a car with it. Or you can't feed anyone with it. But just because we love it, it's that expensive a piece of cardboard that is just so insane if you look at it from a very lame standpoint, which I usually do, very hunter-gatherer, Neolithic standpoint. Like it's worth that much. All it does is just there, and not like anyone uses them. It's not like anyone has a set of Black Lotuses in their deck, because that is throwing away thousands of dollars.
Though, like our parents, for instance. We're into like classic cars, right? Or motorcycles or things like that. These artifacts of the 40s, 50s, 60s. Not that there aren't cars today. I don't mean that. But that became the market. Well, what do you think our generations are going to be? When it's 2040? Yeah. Seriously, what do you think? A friend of mine, and I didn't listen. John Stock. John Stock, right? 4 years ago, he wanted me to buy an Amazing Fantasy number 15, which is the first appearance of Spider-Man. And it was, you could get a graded 4.0 for $5,000, right?
Yeah.
That comic today, 4 years later, is $30,000.
I actually know that. I would just look that one up.
It is at a 4.0, 4.5, right?
Yeah. So for people who don't know, that is 4.0 or 4.5 out of 10.
Yep.
And 10s are not around. Like, maybe there's a couple, but you're going to get a comic that's graded 10 is very difficult to
what he
find.
foresaw and what he was trying to tell me was you can't buy, there are three superhero characters that matter. At the end of the day, it's Batman, Superman,
Spider-Man,
Spider-Man, right?
Yep.
You can't buy Batman and Superman number ones because they're from 1938. They're $1 million comics. There's no way you can buy
Even
them.
when they're teared in half, they're still $1 million comics.
Yep. But you can buy Amazing Spider-Man number one.
Yeah.
Or, you know, first appearances.
Yeah.
And I didn't listen because, like, so I've been of this belief for quite a while. I still think this is true.
Okay.
Where it's going to land, I don't know. But and we're off, like, in some weird thing now. But, like...
That's fine. I want to talk about comics. That's what I'm interested in.
Well, what's happened since 2008, since the bank bailout and all that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. We've artificially kept interest rates at 0%, and we've inflated the stock market and all these things, right?
Yeah.
You know what that means? That means that individual human beings are making millions of dollars, right?
Yeah.
Guess what? Guess who they are now? They're 20, 30-year-olds who grew up on what we are talking about on this podcast.
And that's what they now want, therefore it's now more expensive.
So the classic car of yesterday may very well now be the nerd artifacts.
Yeah.
So that in 2040, what if Amazing Spider-Man #1 or Amazing Fantasy 15, which is the actual first appearance, and what if it's $100,000? What if it's $1 million? Because just like that action in that Superman.
Well, and if you
or
look
that
at
Batman.
you look at those big comics that I had 3 comics I've always wanted, and I have 2 of them, and they're not like the biggest ones ever, but I've always wanted Giant Size #1, Giant Size X-Men #1, which I got. That was the first big comic I ever bought. It cost me $100, and it's not, a huge staple, but I think it is in my eyes. And then first appearance of Punisher. And then the other comic that now is getting further and further out of my reach every day is X-Men #1, because I'm an X-Men guy. And I remember you had one.
I still do. It's faded and it's in terrible shape, but I do have
still
it.
buy it.
So, yeah.
And then of course you have your sleeper hits, your Walking Dead #1s that are, who the hell knew that book would be as expensive as it is now? Yep. Like, that is insane. Like, what, they sold only a couple copies and it was a crappy, the first couple issues of Walking Dead are nothing to write home about. I'm sorry, they're not. And that's one of the comics I was still reading up until recently. But who knew that this random Image comic was going to be, in 10 years, going to be a, whatever,
well,
$9,000 or more book.
Yeah,
like,
the print run on #1 was 7,000 copies. I brought in 4. None of them were for the rack. They were all for subscribers. We didn't have a single copy on the shelf. So, great insight. So,
yeah.
Don't make fun of me.
No, I'm not making fun of you. I'm trying to speak sign language, and neither of us know sign language. But hey, I'm just gonna say it straight up. You're allowed to talk, Billy, for a second. I thought we were going until 7. I thought we started at 5:30.
Oh, we can go to 7.
Yeah, we're going to 7. Yeah, we're good. I'm not ending at 6:30. Screw that. We haven't even made it to the 2000s yet. All right, so let's get back on track. And Billy, you're fired. Don't take the microphone, you bought. Okay, so
Isn't he leaving anyway?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but it's good. We don't have anyone, really to replace him. The other guy in the room just gets me beer. So, anyways, where are we at? So, 1999. So let's try to skip forward, and then if we have a chance, we'll talk about tacos or something fun. So Pokemon happened. When did when and why did you guys go from hole in the wall to expanding? Because I remember when I really first started playing Magic, you guys bought out that other side of the building.
That's a great question.
Yeah, you guys went boom. Was it the comic book movie craze that brought people in for comics for the first time in a long time, or was it Magic?
Well, actually,
or was it?
Let's debunk one thing.
Okay.
So the comic book movie craze, as we know it, right,
Yeah.
started in '99 with X-Men, and
yep.
2000 with Spider-Man.
Yes.
And you know what's happened in the 20 years since? Comic sales have completely crashed.
Really?
Yes.
Because I started buying comics since then.
I just saw this thing the other day. There was issue 387 of Fantastic Four came out in the same week of 2018 or of 1998 as when I saw this, right? So let's say it was May whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so that comic sold 196,000 copies, and it was number 100 on the sales charts.
Okay.
Here's your comparison. Today, if a comic sold 96,000 copies today, it would be the second or third highest book on the sales chart.
Jesus Christ.
You're down to 50,000 copies for sure by number 10. And in the 40,000s all through, for quite a way. So here's some great comparisons. The first week or so Black Panther was out. It's estimated that like 40 million people went and saw Black Panther. Right?
Yes.
Maybe repeats, but that's the estimate, okay? That month's issue of Black Panther sold 23,000 copies.
Jesus.
Just think about how statistically irrelevant.
Yeah, movies are not helping comics. Comics are helping movies. If anything. Movies are helping movies, and comics are just the retarded stepchild in the corner, like, hey guys, remember me?
I mean, it's a lot of things. I don't know the relationship exactly, why this is. I think I have some suspicions.
Yeah.
Comic books in 1940, the reason comics were popular and into the 40s, there was a war going on, right? Mm-hmm. So these comics captured this imagination. They were bright, they were colorful, they were heroes versus bad guys, no complication. The heroes always won. It was fabulous, right? Mm-hmm. It warps into westerns and things like that, which are right out of the popularity of the movies and the pulp novels and
this and that.
All this stuff, right? The thing is, through that whole time, a comic book could do something no other medium could do.
Because there wasn't special effects, there wasn't movies,
you get to a $200 million movie budget, the movie can now do things the comic book can't do.
Yeah.
There is an absolute
spending
crisis.
$200 million on a movie, if you said that sentence in the 50s, you would get shot.
But there is a crisis of what is a comic book right now. In my opinion, what is the point? What is it there for? I am out there every day trying to sell 20 pages of a comic book for $4 when you can fire up YouTube right now and watch cute cat videos all night. Or whatever it is you want to watch on YouTube. Or you get a good comparison. You could get 30-day free trial of HBO Now,
Which now. I watch HBO Now.
And you could watch 7 seasons of Game of Thrones for free, or buy one $4 20-page comic book.
Yeah, which in nowadays, what I was saying earlier is you're not even going to get the full story either. Because of the way they're written right now, do you want 1/10 of a story for $4 that you have to read, or do you want to watch The Wire for the 1,000th time on your phone? Which, the funny thing is, I'm not buying comics right now, and I'm watching HBO Now. So you totally hit the nail on the head. Is I haven't bought comics since a little bit before I got married, and even before then, I dropped down to just 2 books, and it was Saga and Walking Dead, and I couldn't even keep with those. Now in my backpack...
I remember all the phone calls trying to track you down.
I know, you were getting mad. I know, when I'm wearing the Saga shirt. Now let's bring in something. So this is an old topic, but it's something I've always wanted to discuss. So now this is going to stick with... I don't care if we're not up on the timeline. Screw it. We were talking about the relationship between comic books and movies, and I remember when I was still reading a bunch of books, they were doing a lot of those, excuse my language, but social justice-y things of making, a character, they're making Captain America black, they're making Captain Marvel a woman, they're making this and this and this, and they're angering a lot of people. And people, for a long time, you had a lot of people from one political spectrum, like, hey, I'm never going to read comics again because the black Captain America is not like Captain... Like, all this really crazy stuff coming from the internet. And I've always wanted to ask, do you think that those were in any way testing grounds to see what you could do then with the movies? Like, hey, is this going to work? So we have this kind of expendable in their eyes because the amount of money that Marvel Comics is making off of comics compared to what they're making off of movies is nothing. It's barely even a blip in the water compared to what Black Panther makes in a weekend. They're not going to make in a year of comics. So they now can test and try all these different things, which some people find controversial or whatever. And it's literally just to see, hey, if Kamala Khan, which was one of my favorite characters the last 10 years, by the way, can work as Miss Marvel, a Pakistani female Miss Marvel, all Miss Marvels are female, but you know what I'm saying, can work as a character, hey, then maybe you can work as a movie. So what do you think of that as it being more of a testing ground now instead of being the actual medium?
I mean, this is a 2-hour podcast in and of itself. So
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. Let's just close out the business side of it first. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Marvel Comics is an independent entity from Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Okay.
Not one penny from the cinematic universe goes to fund the comics. Not one penny from the comics goes to, period. They do not.
See, that's something I didn't know.
They exist separately. Now, that being said, right, what happened? I mean, Disney buys Marvel in, I don't know, 2013, whatever. I don't remember the year, but maybe it's 2011. It doesn't.
I want to say 11.
Yeah, so.
Because it was right before I started dating my wife, who was 2012, so yeah.
And I got to be really careful with how I answer this. So, when Miss Marvel comes out, the thing is, yes, Miss Marvel is an old Marvel character, right?
Mm-hmm.
No one knows that. No one knows that.
No one knows and no
right?
one cares.
So, effectively, for all intents and purposes, Kamala Khan is an original character taking over what most people probably think is an original character.
But then you got 20 angry nerds.
No, but Miss Marvel... No, Miss Marvel sold amazing.
I know, and I bought them, and I still have that #1, and I love that.
Yeah, and they're
good book.
And they're really good books.
Yeah.
Thor was made
That's
into
a
female, but when that book launched, oh god, we sold that comic like water.
Yeah. Which another one I have #1 of.
For some reason, within about a year, it all collapsed. Now, I think that in my industry, this is the #1 topic right now: is did politics kill Marvel Comics or not?
Marvel Comics kill Marvel Comics.
most people believe, well, Marvel comic sales have absolutely died, absolutely crashed. So most people believe that they pin it on what you're talking about. I don't, because I know this. People like Kamala Khan. People like the Jane Foster Thor.
Yeah.
People like Miles Morales Spider-Man.
Oh,
even I'm in Fargo, North Dakota. My customers are all white guys, right?
Yeah, and
I've never had one of them come up to me and go, "God damn it, how can this black guy be Spider-Man?" No one's ever said that to me.
You don't work in the same factory I work in, but yeah, keep going.
And I understand that. And those guys don't come in my store. I know they're there.
Yeah.
Donald Trump was in town today, and I'm sure it was packed, right?
And I'm sure he's pissed about Miles Morales.
Probably. Yeah. How did he get over the border?
Especially Kamala
All right.
Khan.
I want that edited out.
We're not editing shit. All right.
Crap. No. What I believe is that for the last about 2 years, this is the time, and why it is this 2 years, I don't know. This is the time we have changed the way we consume our media. Mm-hmm. So comic sales dive, right? Yeah, but look around. NFL ratings dive.
Yes.
Cable TV subscribers absolutely crashes.
Yep.
Traditional movie theater attendance, worst years in 20 years. Things like that, right? It isn't because of politics. It's because we have these phones and iPads and services, and we can't measure the people who are using those right now in the way we measure these other things.
And you're right. And I literally watch 40, 50 channels on YouTube, and I almost watch every video that comes up on my screen. So I literally
Marvel Comics would have died.
Much.
Here's the alternate narrative.
Okay.
They don't put in any new characters. They have all their old characters.
Earlier.
They die anyway, and everybody says it's because they didn't adapt to the times. So it would have happened. That would have been the narrative.
You're completely right. You're completely right. If they didn't try these new things, we would have said they died because they didn't. Yeah,
they didn't bring in new diverse characters.
And then we bring in new diverse characters, and they died because they tried something new.
Yep.
But also, I'd rather something fail trying something new than fail and keeping it safe.
The one thing I would say, and Disney's smart. I mean, Disney buys Marvel and does all this. They're just trying to stay. They were trying to figure out how to be relevant. They knew unless they're dumber than me, they have all the stats. They already knew what was going to happen a year before it did in every case, right? So why did they put these characters in there? Because they're trying to save themselves. There's no other reason. We are here. When I'm a business, I'm here to make money. Mm-hmm. Politics are great, and there are young creators in comics
who would rather make a political character with knowing that it's going to cause a controversy unless it's for
because that's bad for business.
Yeah.
You don't drive away, and there are young creators who do that. They would rather make less money. They would rather chase away customers because if they don't agree with their politics, that's fine. But at the end of the day, I'm here to make money. That's the only reason a business exists. But the one thing we don't want is we don't want controversy. It's bad for us. So, almost every time, unless I guess you're the red hen or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's just a fascinating time, and it goes right back to what I said about the movie comparisons. It's why is this happening? Because it's happening everywhere.
Yeah, and I completely agree. It's because of the phones. I get endless entertainment. With all the, not even just YouTube shows, but just straight up shows I'm watching off YouTube, and also HBO Now, where why do I have to watch something with commercials when I can literally watch Wire for the third time anywhere in my house?
You said thousandth time earlier.
Yeah. Did I say third now? I'm literally probably on the sixth, and I was actually watching Wire earlier. As I cleaned, which is something you can't do with those other things. I can do whatever I want because my phone's with me. But when
you still, but the thing is, you still love comics. It's not about
I love comics.
It's not about that. It
I'm
is
sure
about.
You can tell by I have a nerd room. Not a lot of 29-year-olds have a room specifically to play role-playing games in. Like, that is why this room exists. This poker table isn't for poker. I'll tell you that right now.
I went to 2 retailer conferences this year. The second one was sponsored by Diamond Comics, or the world's only comic distributor. Guy who owns Diamond Comics, his name is Steve Jeppe. He's owned it forever and ever and ever. Got to see him in person. He did the keynote address, and he said a couple of really fascinating things.
Okay.
One of them was talking about all the things we're talking about. You are assaulted with all these choices.
Yeah.
And the length of the day has never changed. There are 24 hours in the day,
and we have a lot more to do.
And you have all right, and so, and his point was, what you used to have to find on the spinner rack at the local drugstore is now what everyone's in love with. It's this industry absolutely blew up and became the world. I mean, it became pop culture. It isn't a segment of pop culture. It is pop culture. Yeah, totally. What does that do to your local game store or your local comic shop? Terrible things, but that doesn't matter, and so his point was there's more opportunity, and what you've got to do is bring enthusiasm to the table every day. And I walked home and I said, I've used the phrase enthusiasm is contagious almost every day since then.
Yeah.
There's news every day. There was just this news about Walmart having these exclusive comics and all these things, but it's like, great, you know what? Let's get comics out there in the face of people who aren't coming into comic shops and see if we can get them to fall in love with them,
Well, and also your store has done something that a lot of other stores, and I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus, so I won't, but your store does a lot of things where you adapt. Now you're selling more board games, you're selling Cards Against Humanity, you're one of the few actual stores to sell it instead of just getting it online. So it's not like you said, screw it, I'm only going to sell comics and cards, and if we die, fine, at least I'm dying proud. No, you're going to sell what's going to sell.
If I gave business advice to people, I mean, I'm trying to write a memoir about 25 years of running Paradox. It's our 25th anniversary is coming up.
Yep.
And so
didn't it just happen
it was June 14th, but we're celebrating it in October. So
okay, cool.
So
I'll be there and buy Star Wars books for 10% off.
But I don't know I don't know what I was saying. Sorry.
You're talking about a memoir. You were. You could say one thing.
Well, business advice.
Business advice. Right.
Like what you just said is what I think happens. I think people, if you don't know anything about business, you do 2 things. You go to the Small Business Administration, and they say write a business plan and go to the bank. So you write a business plan, you go to the bank, right? You take that business plan, you take that bank loan, you open your place, whatever. If your business plan fails, I think people just quit. 90% of small businesses fail in the first year. I don't know how it could be any other way that, my business plan didn't work, so I'm done,
Yeah, so you never go back to the drawing board. People are like, I only wanted to sell vinyl pop action figures, and that's it. And if anyone doesn't want to buy them, fine, I'm out.
and these, there's so many kids. Well, my original business partner Tim, he once said, "My business plan is put money in the bank and hope I don't bounce checks." So there's a far cry from that, and giving up when your plan doesn't work. But
literally, your business is to make money, not to sell blank.
And look at it now. Even in Fargo Moorhead, I mean, there's like 4 game stores all of a sudden.
There's a lot.
A guy just opened a toy store.
Yeah, I read about that, and I love that guy's quote. He's just straight up like, well, nerds buy a lot of stuff.
Yeah, he was.
So
he was
I
funny.
sell nerd stuff, and I was like, well,
Yeah.
not gonna lie, like I got a couple $100 worth of action figures on my wall, and I'm 29 years old, so he's not lying.
He's not lying. No, God bless him, and I got to
Yeah.
call that guy and work and no, I like to call everybody.
I
just want to
laughed.
be.
I thought that was great.
I want to be everybody's friend, but like all the things he's selling is all stuff I've sold before. I know what happens with it. There's like if it was really huge, don't you think I would have? Well, anyways,
and also you've been selling you've been selling pop figures, which is probably another great thing. I'm sure you're glad you jumped on that train right when it came out. But now it's everywhere.
Yeah, we got out.
So.
See, I get once I think the ceiling is low, I don't want to sell it. So I dove out of pop figures like a year ago because could I sell some? Sure,
but now it's at Hot Topic. It's at everywhere.
Yep,
yeah.
I don't want to be in that. I want to be in things that have the highest possible return I can get out of them, and it's not something that. I mean, Shields has pop figures.
Yes.
Are you kidding?
Barnes and Noble has
Yeah,
a crap ton. Has a section the size of their book section is on pop figures.
Yeah, and guess what? I can't compete with Barnes and Noble.
No,
they have all the money in the
Yeah, there used to be a bookstore in town that wasn't Barnes and Noble, and they're not here anymore for a reason. Yeah, because you can't compete with them. But,
yeah, I mean, but even all those places. I mean, GameStop is looking at getting bought out. Barnes and Noble's been in financial trouble off and on, over and over and over again. I mean, their whole thing where they fired all their full timers, and they froze full time hiring, then they fired full timers. Their whole model now is only part timers. That'll work for a while, but now you can't hire quality people.
That's a slippery slope.
Yeah,
you're now admitting defeat, and you're trying to keep the body as long
keep
as
figuring
you can.
out how to keep it going. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, we all do that.
And then somebody's gonna buy it like they bought Toys R Us, and then pump it and burn it out, and then it's gonna be gone.
I mean, for me, in the last 3 years, I've let 2 full-time employees go. I just let one go yesterday, and it's like every time. I mean, I'm a small business, right?
Yeah,
I get ahead
you've been
of
a small business for a long time.
But I get in my head of myself, and I get excited, and I think all these great things could happen. But I mean, you got to know who you are, and you can't overreach unless. Well, there's a way you can, but I hate it. But and every time I've ever tried to create a full-time position that isn't mine or my manager John's, it's never worked. It works for a while, or it's deceptive, or whatever. So you got to know who you are. You've got to be willing to adapt. And you just got to persevere. I mean, we did it for 25 years because the door was open every morning. That's the only reason.
And also, I feel like, at least for the most part, all your guys have always been extremely helpful every time I've came in. You've always had really good guys, save for maybe 1 or 2 people where I felt like I was bugging them, just asking them
it happens,
a
right?
question.
I mean,
but that's fine.
We're all human. We're never going to be perfect.
Yeah, but for the most part, I would say, literally, you've always had good guys, but at the same time, I've always been amazed by how many employees that you've actually been able to hold on to, because it always, in my brain, a small business is you working 13 hours a day, and that's it. And the fact that you've had as many employees as you have has always been like,
but
wow.
that is a small, and it was.
Yeah.
I did that for 15 years
15
probably,
years,
before
geez.
I had any...
Where it was you and Brad and John, and that's it.
Yeah, pretty much, and there was a time, especially right after my partnership breakup, I had one employee. I worked every day but Sunday, and I had him work Sundays, and that was it. And I would open the store at 10 a.m., work till 9 p.m., go get a pizza, and watch Star Trek Voyager reruns. That's literally what I did.
That was your one day off.
But what's the other thing that's really different is, when I grew up, everyone hated each other. And you're thinking to yourself, how is that different than today? But but
especially in nerd culture is
well,
the thing too.
No, it's way different. So stores hated each other.
Oh, okay.
Conventions hated each other. Different types of fans hated each other. Game groups hated each other.
Yeah.
And I learned that. I learned that before I even opened my store.
So you became friends with everybody.
Well, no, I didn't, though, back then. I carried that into the business. When I opened, everyone was the enemy to me. If you weren't buying at my store, it was a net loss for me, and you were the enemy. And it's, oh, my God.
Even though you were friends with the Comic Junction guy, but if you went and bought comics
But I wasn't friends with Comic... Oh, no, I wasn't friends with the Comic Junction.
I thought you were.
Not back then.
Okay.
No, I am now. I'm friends with everybody now because it's good for business.
Well, I've told a couple people I was going to talk to you, and not one person's like, Rich, he's horrible. Like, they're all like, good guy, you'll have a good talk.
There are people who, especially in the late 90s, there are things that I did that I absolutely deserve to have people hate my guts. Like, there are, but you can't control any of it. There's a guy who's never been back to my shop for 20 years because he thought I offered him too little on his Magic cards. That's his reason for never going back.
Yeah, I'm blaming him, not you on
But
that
he's
one.
a great guy. I love that guy. I miss him, and I would offer him more if it meant, that I could fix that.
If you can mend that one. Yeah.
But there were there's a segment of miniatures gamers who hate my guts, and there's a huge story behind
I feel
that.
like minis just never took off in that area, but they're in this area compared to, because I lived in West Coast for a long time, and Magic wasn't as huge as it is here, and it was all Warhammer and War Machine there. And I was blown away, like, I didn't know this was as big as it is, and it was in West Coast. And then back here, sure, you're going to see a couple people, but I don't think it's this area. Or is it this area or your...
No, minis, I don't know why, but, I tried every which way but loose to have miniatures gaming work, and then,
I remember buying
Steve
Pirates and Axis and Allies from you way back in the day.
Well, and Steve comes along and opens Little Big Wars and was trying to make it work and all that sort of stuff.
Is that an opening? I remember when that opened. Is that still
4 or 5
going
years
on?
ago. Oh yeah, he's still around. So.
Okay, that's good. And then here's a question for you. And this is something that I've said multiple times whenever I talk good about your store, is how you've been selling such a niche thing, and you haven't only just been surviving, but it looks like you've expanded and done everything. So have you been doing good, or is it still the same thing as it ever was, where you're just slaving at it every day, just hoping you can continue doing your passion every day, or are you actually fine, you're succeeding, you're at the point where you're happy with life?
From like 93 to 2003, I made nothing. Absolutely nothing.
But at least you're selling comics and not anything else.
39-cent burgers at McDonald's were a treat, like back. and I had my at home, I had my electricity turned off, my phone turned off, I had rent checks bounced. There's just, you name something that could happen, and it happened, and it was all because you just tried to keep the door open at the shop. And in 2003, I realized that I'm 33 years old now, and I haven't been taking this seriously, and so I had to decide, like, is this what I want to do or not? And I decided it was what I wanted to do. And John had been with me for 3.5 years, and the next 5 years we grew. We weren't making any money still, but we at least had we at least were doing something. We were acting like a business, and we were cleaning the place up and changing our models and all that sort of jazz. And then from 2008, so everywhere else in the country goes in the tank except for me, apparently. So every year from 2008 to 2015, my sales grew. Every month beat the previous year's month.
Jeez,
every year beat
insane.
for 7 years. But you know what? I caught the board game wave when there were no other shops in town, and Big Box didn't have it.
And I bought a lot of board games, and that's a good thing. Yep.
I caught, so many things like that. It was just perfect. It was just like, that was right spot, right place, right amount of money, and it worked great for 7 years, you know. The oil boom was happening that entire time. There was an August in 2013. I made 3 times as much money as the August the year before in that month. And like, it was, guys would show up from the oil fields. They had their apartments.
$200 worth of something.
$1,000 worth of something. So a guy, remember the guy who bought my Thor replica hammer? It was like, how much was it? We just said, I don't know, $1,200. He's like, okay, I'll take it.
I believe I was in the store when that happened. I think I was, because I remember that.
We're like, okay.
Or maybe somebody just told me and it blew my mind.
Yeah.
I had one more thing I was going to bring up, and I just now remembered because I don't have my notes in front of me, which I barely wrote down any notes, so it's fine. I don't even think I wrote this. So, was a couple years you had, I'm switching off of comics finally. We spent an hour and a half on them. So a couple years ago you had more surgery on your eyes, right?
Yes.
And I remember I was still hanging out with Nick a lot at the time, I think, and then he told me a little bit about it. So it was very experimental. You had it, or wasn't it? Or this is what I remember. So you tell me. It was very experimental. It was like the best eye doctor in this country or whatever, and he did a lot of stuff on your eyes.
You're pretty close. Yeah.
Woo! All right.
Can I finish that last answer just real quick?
God.
So
Jeez.
I've never made a ton of money personally.
Mm-hmm.
I am debt free, and I've paid to live for 25 years,
That's
and I
good.
have a little bit of money set aside. And seriously, I do. And we made a lot of money in 2013 and 14.
That you
But
were
it just
done with
it
it.
just
Yeah.
funneled back into the shop, and
Yeah.
it got us out of debt and things like that. So I'm blessed, Like
Yeah.
I couldn't be happier.
Well, and
I'm
also
never.
as a
I
comic
don't.
book store being able to say it, and I have a little money on the side.
Yep,
I bet
and I've had health insurance to the store and things like that.
Cool.
But I don't have a 401k. I don't have all
Yeah.
those things that people who work those I just don't have any of those things, right? But whatever. So that was really the finish, except for since 2015, we've gone straight downhill in sales, and it sucks. But so is every retail operation ever. At least we're not Sears,
Yeah, or Herberger's now. If you're
Yep.
lasting longer than those giant department stores, you're doing something, right?
Yeah, we're down, but every year we're down 10% in sales, and I don't know where it's going to end. So
Jeez.
that's the struggle right
Which
now.
is why you're down to 2 full-time employees.
Yeah, I mean
Life.
it's definitely the majority reason. Yeah,
Yeah,
so I mean it's
stinks, especially
it
because
does.
also you guys
But-
are very friendly, and it's not just random employee number 1.
But I
it's guys
remember
you've known for
2008, and it's
Yeah.
2018, and I know that and I love 2013 and 14, but I also know I knew in 2014 it wasn't real. I was like,
this isn't gonna be now.
Yeah, so
it's not gonna be a thing. Forever.
but it's much harder to watch it go down than it was ever to watch it go up. So
Yeah.
it's I'm not crying. Like I'm blessed. I'm a really lucky guy, and I might do this for another 25 years, or they might stop publishing physical comics in 2. Like who knows?
Yeah.
So the surgery though, yeah. So at the time I had this thing done, I had an artificial cornea put in my eye. So that means there's a piece of
Jesus.
plastic stuck in my
as
face.
your cornea.
Yeah, right.
Holy crap!
I
In one eye or both eyes?
Well, I remember I had no vision in the left eye.
and it wasn't able to save the left. That's just gonna
Nope.
be gone. So it was just to
Yep.
help your right from going away.
Yeah, exactly. So I rejected. I had 2 human transplants and rejected both of those. So when I got it, there were like 3,500 of them that had been done, and there were like 3 doctors on the planet who did them. One of them happened to be in Rochester. I mean, it's pretty lucky that I even end up with that guy. I don't know how I end up with that guy. I don't know how this even happens. It's just whatever. It's just one of those things. Right?
Yeah.
So
I
mean, I'm an interesting.
A lot of the nerds were bringing up, like, you hear what Rich is going through? Like,
Yeah,
what?
well,
He's getting...
Yeah, well, I'm an interesting case to them. It's good, it's because of my age. Usually it's older people. Usually it's like things like that, right? So I've always been sort of in the
You're not gonna
glaucoma
risk
I
a giant
had and
surgery,
everything.
yeah.
So it could very well be that's why.
Yeah.
And now like I'm gonna be, and so are a lot of us. Like for me, I'm gonna be in one of the last generations of blind people in the history of the world. Isn't that awesome?
Jeez.
I mean, isn't
That's insane. That's a
it's-
Twilight Zone
it's-
episode. That's
because,
amazing.
because they're either gonna put microchips, and they're putting microchips in your retinas.
Yeah.
And they put them in healthy retina tissue, and the resolution's horrible, but they're doing it.
But it's still resolution.
Yeah.
Like you're still seeing.
The guy who I also had retina surgery in 2015. The guy who did that, his name is Dr. Iezzi. He's on a team with the Defense Department. What they're doing is they're trying to bypass the optic nerve, go right into the brain where your visual cortex center is,
Yeah.
and create digital cameras so that you can see through those.
I think
you
you
don't
explained
even-
that to me right
Yeah.
when it happened, and
Yep.
that just blew my mind. Like,
Yep.
so literally, like, yeah, we made the camera based on the eye, and now we're literally reconstructing the eye based on the camera. Like,
When
it's
people have
so
asked me, when I say
insane.
things like, I'm going to be in one of the last generations of life, does that make you sad? It's like, no, it makes me
No, are
happy.
you
Like,
fucking kidding
no
me?
one should ever do this.
Yeah,
it's not a plan.
Horrible. Yeah, it's not
So-
not like you're like, yeah, but blindness, it never treated me wrong.
Yeah.
No, it's a horrible thing. It's not a biased opinion. It's just it sucks that you can't see. But that's pretty awesome that you were able to get it. So how great is it worked? Have you noticed?
It worked really well. But so my major visual problem is that my retina is effectively dead.
Okay.
So your retina is on the back of the eye, and it's all these tiny little cells, and a lot of my cells are simply damaged. So I don't have any sharp acuity. My field of vision is very small. So what the cornea does is that's what lets light in. So that's clear
Okay.
as a bell. It's fantastic, But then the cells on the retina are the things that interpret
So essentially,
that, and-
it's now still blurry, but you can at least
Yeah,
see the picture now.
It was when I first had the surgery, it was amazing. Like it was a huge change. It's
I remember
gotten
talking
worse.
to you right after that, and you said, "No, this has been great." And I was like, "That's awesome. Cool."
It's gotten worse. I bought 3 years at least by doing that surgery, but as my retina continues to decline, my vision just gets worse. And physically, it's healthy. There's nothing to do. The one thing we can't do, we can't repair nerves. We can't do that. And so you get nerve damage. That's it. You have nerve damage. So that's what the retina is. So
it's horrible.
Well,
But
that's don't call it horrible. Like it's the character. It's one of the characteristics of who I am as a person, right? Because if I sat here and said it was horrible, like I might as well kill myself, like right, like if you're a paraplegic, if you're whatever you are, like that's what you are.
You gotta own it. Yeah, you're right.
You can't spend your life saying I can't see the same things other people do. Boo hoo me, right? Well, I can't. Like so what? You can't fly. So
you can too. So that's great.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean it is what it is, and you just gotta understand. It's just a part of who you are.
Yeah, so. I feel you. Like I put up with the fact I can't control the volume of my voice and the fact that I love saying horrible things at bad times. So, I got my things I put up with. Plus, I'm very ugly, and that's another thing you just gotta realize. But I
can get eye surgery. What do you
and I couldn't fix this. Like, I would just scare the doctor away. But anyways, so and then I don't got too much more. I feel like that was really good. Let's bullshit. So. I got one question. I remember when I first started coming to the store when I was a teenager, and I just gotta ask, how much did you hate me right when you first started because of my vulgarity constantly? I love saying the aristocrats jokes during Magic the Gathering tournaments. Yep. I liked if I didn't end the sentence with cunt, it was a problem. I remember just being 16 in that area, and just I know everyone above the age of 30 was like, why is he here? Who keeps bringing him into Magic tournaments? He's not even a good Magic player.
No, the staff never hated you for a second.
Really?
No, because you had passion.
Yeah, so, and I still do. That's the one thing I got.
Like one of my like Brad Meixner, right? You mentioned Brad earlier. Yeah. The reason I love Brad, despite all his flaws, is because he's the quintessential nerd. He just loves what he does. He loves what he reads and watches, and like I was so a lot of my life I was ashamed to admit the things because that's what I learned. I learned as I grew up, and I learned to be ashamed of my eyesight and to pretend I didn't have bad eyesight. I learned to hide my love of comic books, like all these things, right? And Brad was just, I don't give a crap, and that's what you were. That's what you were like,
and I always
so
felt
that connection always was made for me with you.
That's great.
So
it's great because I hated Brad for a long time. So that's funny to me. Now me and him work in the same factory, but we're so far apart and on different shifts, or maybe we're even on the same shift. I don't know. But we see each other during the yearly whatever. What word am I looking for?
Picnic, Christmas party,
whatever. The beginning of the year, the orientation. There we go.
But
orientation,
you know what you guys.
And I love bullshitting with him in that 10 minutes where we don't have to hear about how you're not allowed to sexually harass anymore, and everyone's like, "What? When did this become a thing?" We haven't got the same video every year, but yeah. So I love now talking and bullshitting with him because. Yeah, because we have a lot of the same passions.
But you guys that was cutting edge though, right? Mm-hmm. And here, the theme of the world basically is identity in the last 20 years, right?
Yeah.
It's being the thing I keep coming back to is I keep saying the phrase "it's okay to be you."
Yeah, shit.
And it wasn't okay to be you. It didn't used to be.
Especially nerds.
But whether you're
told that it isn't. Yeah.
Yeah, but what were nerds since the X-Men came out? We were the people who wanted it to be okay to be us.
And I'm sure this has happened to you, but I've been at the bar where somebody finds out I'm a nerd, and then they ask me about the Avengers movies, like, so what's the deal with Groot? So what is he? And knowing, or when Dark Knight Rises came out, I had to explain that, Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character was not a Robin to everybody, because they kept coming up to me, is he Robin? What's up? I'm like, I don't know what he is, but these are Robins. These are all the Robins, Dick Grayson and Tim Drake, and he's not one of them. But I don't know. Like, Christopher Nolan doesn't really care about Batman, so he just did whatever he wanted. And I remember having kind of almost a superpower when all these came out, is we were on the trains. We did know all this lore of all these movies that people are now interested in. Which being the coolest guy at the party for 1 second, because you already understood, all these weird comic book knowledges. At least, I don't know if that ever happened to you, if no one came up to you at a bar next to you about Robin, but I don't think you go out too much.
Well, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So no, but it's it's Pride Week for nerds, It's like it's like we're in the same place. These are people who, all of us together, right? These are people who are willing to dress up in a costume, and go to a convention.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the difference between that and the LGBTQ community having Pride Week? What is the difference? It's all telling you it's okay to be whoever you want to be, and you don't have to be ashamed of it. You don't have to be afraid of it. And I grew up that you did have to be those things. And I what I want to do now is I want to public speak, and I want to write, and I want to blog, and I want to tell people you don't have to be afraid, and it's okay to be whoever you want to be.
Because we're still normal people, just we didn't glob onto the same things.
I grew up a blind comic shop owner, and I like dealt with depression and anxiety and shame, and I dealt with ADHD that was undiagnosed and all these things, and I get it,
Yeah.
And I don't want any of you to have to do that, because
I feel you.
Because I hid away from the reality of all that stuff,
Yeah.
So but that's my message now: is how can I help you be you,
Yeah. Well, that's perfect, because that's where we're ending it. So I feel like that was a good ending. I'm glad you didn't say all that thoughtful stuff right away.
Yeah, no, I Paradox's mission is to help people, help change people's lives. That's why that shop exists. It's why it always existed.
Yeah,
when I dropped out of
haven for. Yeah.
When I dropped out of school, I'm the first person it ever helped. Like, seriously, I didn't even exist, and I'm the first person it ever helped.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What we're all about, and it's scary to acknowledge that publicly, because some people won't like that. Some people will be afraid. Don't get in my face with with that stuff. Like I just want to shop, but that's what we do. So we more and more charities, and focusing on kids. Those are our things. So.
Yeah, and I see that a lot. I see a lot of your guys' stuff on Facebook where it's events of bring your kids to this and check out this days, and those are great.
Yep.
But yeah. But I think this is good talk. We gotta end it because
yes, my ride's gonna be here.
Yeah, I think your ride's here.
I'm
looking at your ride.
I gotta continue to have a fiance. So
good luck. I gotta continue to have a wife. Thank God she's working long hours. All right, good talk.
I don't want to plan a wedding.
I'll tell. Yeah, I know it sucks. I'll tell you that right now. Do it at the zoo. It was fun. But all right, good talk. So talk to you later. And awesome.
Thanks.
End it. Burly, durly, curly, furly, surly, durly, burly, curly, hurly, shirley, merly, burly, whirly, durly. There you guys go. Conversation with Rich early, and I think that went really well. And hopefully it didn't get too geeky for you. It could have gotten a lot more geeky for me. I can talk about comic books for way longer, but yeah, we didn't want to get a little too geeky and scare away you normal people out there. So yeah, I thought that was a pretty good conversation. I can't wait to show you guys our next one. I'm having a conversation with Luke Safely, who you might have been seeing around. He does some music stuff, does some art stuff around town. Also is a mailman, or was a mailman. I think he might still be one. We'll find out. And that conversation's going to come out on July 15th. So there you go. Get excited for it. And, stay alive for the next week. Don't get purged or anything. And talk to you guys later.